What's going on YouTube? My name is Trey Kepsel and this is Elk Motorsports. In today's video, I'm going to be showing y'all how to rebuild a transfer case and check to see if it has to be shimmed to adjust for whether or not you're going to use stock gears with case wear, bearing wear, or if you're upgrading gears. So let's get to it. Alright guys, I'm going to show y'all some of the tools that you're going to need to do this job. If you're rebuilding your transfer case, you're going to need a rebuild kit for sure. Your main case gasket and your front cover gasket, 2 output shaft seals and your input shaft seal, your 3 flange nuts, and your O-ring for your countershaft. You're going to need your bearings, you're going to need some axle grease, you're going to need some sort of adhesive gasket material. I'm using Permatex The Right Stuff. This is just what's highly recommended to use. You can actually use it as a substitute for a gasket when you have 2 metal mating surfaces. You're gonna need some snap ring pliers, you're gonna need some needle nose pliers. They don't need to be these long ones, they can just be regular needle nose or a short pair. You're gonna need a shallow or deep 12mm socket. These flange nuts, the trail gear instructions say it's a 28, but this is a 27mm socket and it fits fine. A pocket screwdriver will be helpful, even just a regular flathead screwdriver. Pry bar. It can be a ball peen hammer. I'm just opting to use a little brass mallet, a dead blow, or a rubber mallet. You can use a 3/8 impact gun or you can use a 3/8 ratchet. Probably be good to use both. You definitely don't want to use this to put it together because it's only, I want to say 16 or 26. I think it's 26 or 23 foot-pounds to put the case back together. And then a 1/2 impact will definitely help to take those flange nuts off, but you don't need to use that. You can use the 27mm socket with a 1/2 ratchet and put some bolts in the flanges and use this pry bar to hold it while you loosen them. You're going to need your transfer case, obviously, out of the truck. You don't need a parts washer, but it definitely helps clean up all of your parts inside of this. You're also going to need an adjustable wrench. You'll need a 1/4" ratchet and a 10mm socket. Let's get this thing going. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your 4-wheel drive selection switch out. You just use your adjustable wrench and pull that out. And then you're going to want to flip the transfer case upside down to get that detent ball out for the 4-wheel drive switch. To make note, it is actually larger than any of the other detent ball bearings. So just keep that in mind so that way you'll know where it goes. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to want to pull all these flanges off. So you'll notice that the flange nuts are punched down with a punch to lock them in place so they will not come off. This is where having that impact is of great use because you can use a punch to punch these kind of back out, but they're really gonna give you a hard time. So having the impact gun is really gonna help. It's not needed. You can use a big breaker bar and put some bolts in here and hold it with a pry bar and get them out. Also want to make mention your input flange and your front input flange are the same depth, but your rear output is longer. So just keep that in mind. So that way you don't put your rear output flange as your input or your front output. So we got that off. You flip your transfer case upside down. Right here is a plug. It is a 6mm Allen. You just take that out, and inside there, use your little pocket screwdriver, you'll pull a spring out. And then flip it around upside down and a little detent ball will fall out. And you can note the size difference between them. That four-wheel drive selector switch detent and then that other detent ball. Next, your Speedo cable sleeve. I pulled the 10mm out of here that holds the cable in. You want to remove that all the way, and then you're going to pull this sleeve out. We can take off this front case cover. This is where your 12mm comes into play. Now, these bolts are different lengths. So it will be good to kind of keep them oriented the way you pull them out. So I'm gonna use a piece of pegboard that I drilled out bigger, and I just dropped all the bolts in. See, the bolts are different lengths. And I'm just gonna use this brass hammer to hit this case to get it to come off. There are these little tabs on the case that protrude out on the bottom and on the top that you can strike. The next thing to pull out, right here's your countershaft with a 12mm bolt holding a little stay in place. And now we can pull the bolts that hold the two main case halves together. And there should be 11 bolts. So, just like before, I took my pegboard and I drilled the holes out a little bit larger, and I dropped the bolts in the way they go. So I want to show you all this diagram. So this right here, this portion, is that front case. These two shift levers have three detent balls. There's one right here with a spring, which we removed earlier on the bottom of the case. Then there's another one inside. Then here's the center detent ball. Because I'm doing the twin stick, I'm not gonna reinstall that center ball. That'll prevent the two shafts from moving at the same time. It only allows the shifter to move one or the other. So by removing that, you can work both sticks together. So just a heads up, let y'all know what we're gonna come across here in a minute. I don't know if you can see in there, there is a detent ball inside of there. Here's that one we pulled out. It's the outside one for this shaft. There's another one inside here on a spring, and then right there is the center detent ball. There we go, center detent ball. We won't be reusing that. And there is the other detent ball with the spring. As you can see, these three are all the same size, and that four-wheel drive sensor switch detent ball is larger. So for this twin stick, we'll use the two outside ones. We will not use the center one. Just to reiterate, not the center one. Now, you want to pull this counter shaft. You don't necessarily have to pull the whole thing out, but the whole thing's coming out. You want to pull this gear off. Here's your roller bearing. You want to inspect it to make sure it's good. Here's this other one. And then here is a bearing spacer. It goes in between both of them to just space them out so this gear is supported on both sets of helical cut gears. And on the back side of that counter shaft is the other thrust washer. The shim should be on these gear sets. Then we're gonna pull this input gear assembly off. Now you can take this shifter fork and you can rotate it and pull it off. So now, to get this off, oh, well there you go. That's how you get it off. And your transfer case is for the most part apart, aside from pressing those bearings on and off. I'm gonna pull these seals out. gonna clean up some parts in the parts washer and then get back to reassembling everything. I have the input shaft and the out shaft all assembled, all the bearings, all the gears are on them. So this is the part where you would take your case halves and you'd measure the distances and you'd measure all the assembled shafts to check your actual thrust tolerances to make sure that you're within specification. At this point, this is where you would really need that Suzuki Samurai service manual to check it if you want the specifications, or watch this video. I'm going to give you all the specifications that you're going to need. So right here in the book, it says that your thrust clearance specification is 0.05 to 1.5 millimeters. Now the way that you do this is this diagram has the rear case half and the mid case half. This side right here is the input shaft side, and this side right here is the rear and front output shaft side. You're going to want to do the rear because it is the one that has the bearing to bearing mating surface. So you'll get the distance from the bearing mating surface to the case mating surface. You'll take your gasket thickness, which the crush gasket thickness is 0.3 millimeters. That's a constant. And then you're going to get your bearing mating surface to your case half on your mid case half. You'll add all that together. You'll take your bearing mating surface to your bearing mating surface on your input shaft. You'll get that distance, which is C. And then you'll get that C clip on that bearing on the output shaft, and then that outside mating surface on that bearing and that'll give you C for the output shaft. So the caliper I'm going to use, I did get from Harbor Freight. Now the reason why I'm using this one is because look at how precise it is. I have another one that just is like 0.0, but as you can see right here, we need to be able to go to the 0.00 millimeter spot. My other caliper doesn't go down that far, this one does. The other nice thing about this caliper is right here in the back, that is your depth gauge. Well, the nice thing is it will give you a digital readout of your depth. This will be a lot more accurate for what we're gonna do. And it wasn't that expensive. I'll put a link in the description where you can get this off of Amazon. So, the hardest part for getting this depth measurement is going to be going from this bearing stop to the edge of this case. The way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna use a speed square to set my stop limit. So I'm gonna stop at the very bottom of this speed square. So I'm gonna work this depth gauge down until it touches that bearing mating surface. And then I'm gonna take it to the bottom of this speed square. Try to eyeball it the best I can, which looks like it's right there at 81.32. Then I'm gonna do the same thing, put it right there on my bearing surface. That looks spot on. 113.02. My gasket thickness is 0.3 millimeters for both. And now I need to do my measurement for my mid case half. Zero out my gauge. I'm gonna go right on this snap ring, which looks like it's 35.82 for the input. And now I need to take my output shaft. 27.55. Now I'm going to take my input shaft, make sure my gauge is zeroed out. $16.9. Maybe 117 actually. 117 even, I want to say. Now this one will definitely be the hardest one because of this bigger gear. Maybe like this will work. Looks like 140.49, maybe. All right. So for the output shaft, I got 113.02 plus 0.3 plus 27.55. That gives me 140.87 millimeters. So to figure this out, that's the case distance. Here's the shaft. You're going to take that 140.87 minus 140.49. Which gives me 0.38 millimeters. And then the input shaft is 81.32 plus my 0.3 for my gasket plus 35.82, which is 117.44 millimeters. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do that 117.44 millimeters minus 117 even, which is 0.44 millimeters. So the number that we need is 0.05 to 0.15 millimeters. So if you do this one minus the 0.05, which is the minimum bearing clearance, it's 0.33 millimeters. And that's on the output shaft. Now, the shim that came on it, if I'm not mistaken, it's a 0.3 millimeter. Yep, 0.32. So this shim that came on the output shaft is correct. I can use it again on the output shaft, which is good. You kind of just got to mess around. Like I tried the 0.15 millimeter, like the max, and it was too much. So then I come down here to the 0.44 and I subtract it by the 0.05. It would need to be a 0.39 millimeter. Or if I did 0.44 minus 1. Oh no. The 0.44 minus the 0.15, which would be a 0.29, right? So I would need another 0.3 millimeter shim. So I need to order another one of these for the input shaft. Well, I hope that really kind of illustrates for you guys how to shim a transfer case. The shim that was on my output shaft originally is perfect for what I needed. I need to get a shim for my input shaft. I'll get that ordered so that way we can complete assembling this transfer case to complete this video, and then I'll be able to do the video installing it in the cradle and then putting it in the truck. Well guys, got the shim in. I didn't know this, but Zuks Offroad is able to get these shims. It's not listed on their website, but I just called up Myron and he told me that he can get them no problem. So we can get this transfer case rebuild done. Here I put the first shift fork in. This shift fork is the driver's side shift fork. If you're not doing the twin stick modification, inside this hole you will drop one of the 3 smaller ball bearings. It'll fall through, and this shifter, you shift it into neutral, there's a cutaway. The other one has 3 marks on the outside and 1 in the middle. That ball bearing will drop into this spot out of the way. You'll drop a second one of these into a spot on the spring that I just dropped in, and it will go on one of these notches of this. I'm doing the twin stick mod, so I'm only gonna use 2 of these. I'm not gonna put the middle one in. I just wanted to point that out. So we'll put the jams back on and we'll keep going. Well guys, the transfer case is shimmed and the rebuild is complete. The next video in this series, I'll be installing that Zuks Offroad driver's side transfer case mount. Be sure to hit a like if this was content that you enjoyed watching, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so that way you can stay up to date on what I've got going on in the shop. And do me a big favor, hit that bell icon so that way every time I upload a video, YouTube will notify you so you don't have to keep coming back and forth to the channel. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.